strapping myself into a JetRanger. Or do you call it 206? What do you call it?
Either or. Bell 206 B3 JetRanger.
I'm with my buddy Brad. It's his JetRanger. Start us off. How does this thing get going?
We'll go through checklist on it, make sure we follow every procedure, even though we've done this God knows how many times. We'll make sure that we get it right. We'll take the frictions off, make sure that we have clearance of our cyclic, pedals, collective. We'll double check throttle, make sure throttle is off. Landing light switch off, hydraulic controls are on, that's down here. Fuel valve switch on.
Okay.
We'll go overhead switches, everything's gonna be off. Generator is a clicky button there. We always keep our anti-collision on. I do at least, so if my battery is on when I leave, I can make sure I don't have a dead battery. Fuel pumps are off. Every other circuit breaker is in, and avionics are off, so when we turn the generator on, we don't blow them out. Circuit breakers are all in, except for fuel pumps, got it. Battery switch is on, and we'll turn our warning. We then check our warning lights here, making sure that everything is working. There's some that I'm gonna expect to be on right now because we're not started up. I have 2 fuel pumps. I'll disconnect one. No real change there, no significant change there, so both are working. We got engine relight here for a turbine, so we'll test it. You'll hear some clicks. That's working. Flight controls are in the neutral position. Friction's back on. We'll double check our throttle is in the full off position when we get started. So we'll get our clock going here. We want to make sure that we know how much time we're spending and what we're doing here. Clear! We're watching our M1 gauge. We're going to want to see it at least 12. It's a cold day. We're going to hope to get up to 15 right now when we start, and then we'll kick in some fuel. And here we go. We watch our temperature. Perfect. Once we get up to 58% there, we can let off the starter and it becomes self-sustaining. All right, we're going to get this up to 1 minute. Once it's going for 1 minute, we'll roll it up to 70 and we'll turn some other things on here.
Feels a little bit different wearing a headset instead of a helmet as I usually fly with. Now we don't have boosted pedals in this, but cyclic and collective are on hydraulics. Hydraulics back on. Engine relight is on. We've checked those. We'll get our position lights, and since it's a little bit murky outside today, we'll put our flashers on back there as well. Temperatures and pressures are in the green. Everything's looking good. Let's roll up our throttle. So what we do, we'll want to keep our torque below 33% as we roll it up. And we're watching our rotor and turbine RPM come up. We just do it slow. Everything compared to as a you fly R44, and I came from an R44, is a little bit quicker. You know, this is a little bit more just deliberate and slower. Now, depending on the day in this, you'll fly both by power or temperature. After our 5-minute takeoff, we're going to be capped at 85%. Okay. So if it's a hot day, oftentimes you'll be flying at 70-75% because your TOT, or your temperature, turbine temperature out, is going to be hotter. So you want to make sure, just depending on the day, of how you're flying. Otherwise, we are looking good. Let me make sure my frictions are off here. Correct traffic, helicopter November 376 Bravo Tango at the south helipad for a southbound departure. Chrono traffic. Clear on the right.
Chrono traffic,
clear left.
Cherokee 07 Whiskey, turning left crossing, we actually will remain in the pattern. Corona.
Alright, let's turn into the wind here.
Corona traffic, Cherokee 7974 Whiskey, departing runway 25 for closed traffic, Corona.
We'll get it up to 60 knots just like the Robinson, and we'll pop up here.
It's funny, as soon as you get rid of that reciprocating engine vibration, it feels a lot more like floating, doesn't it?
It does. It's a pretty smooth thing.
Left cross, 25 Corona.
This guy
Traffic inside?
Yep.
Left base, runway 25 Corona.
Car traffic, helicopter 6 Bravo Tango, departing, heading southbound at 800 feet, Corona.
So question number 1, why JetRanger?
I've been obsessed with helicopters since 8-9 years old, so this is it helicopter for me. I think it's a great option the safety, the reliability. I think the FAA looks at it as the #1 safest single-engine aircraft in the sky. So whether fixed wing or heli, that's how it's looked at, from a safety perspective with the FAA, which is awesome. So, if I'm putting friends and family in a helicopter, I want to feel comfortable, and I want something that is going to give me what I need. I don't do this for a living, so it's supposed to be fun.
You started off your helicopter journey in an R44. Tell me about the transition from a Robinson R44 like I fly to the JetRanger.
I think the transition is pretty smooth. It's still right side PIC. It's still a light helicopter. Turbine versus reciprocating engine. The best example I could always give is if you're driving like a C-Class Mercedes, that you feel some of the bumps along the road, and then you go to an S-Class, and it's just a lot more stable and hunkered down would be the best term I could give it. Like, I remember my very first liftoff in this thing when we took off out of Salem, Oregon, with the co-pilot that I brought for that ferry flight home. I looked at him and I said, what are we doing, like 40 knots? He's like, no, we're up to 85, man. And it's like, it's just a smooth ship. Blades still swing the same way as the 44. Everything's very synonymous in many respects. Hydraulic controls on both, so that was nothing really major to get over. It is a little bit of a heavier ship. My 44 was at 1,650 pounds. This one I think weighs in 1,861. I have greater cargo capacity. This one actually has a cargo compartment, which is wonderful. Instead of just trying to stuff everything underneath your seat. The 44 I was capped at 2,500 pounds. This one I'm at 3,200.
You got 5 seats. You have a dedicated cargo area. How is it to live with? Does it have all the space and the arrangement that you want?
Yeah, it's a little bit wider and roomier. And as I've often joked with the 44, it's a 4-seater, but it's really a 3-seater. Here, you're always playing the weight and balance game with it. So at the 75 gallons, it's a true 5-seater, no problem. As long as you're not putting 5 large, adults in here.
You mentioned weight and balance. Yes. So because it's a 2-bladed helicopter, there's a little bit more sensitivity to that, where are you putting the weight in it? Same thing in the R44. Any issues with managing that weight?
Absolutely, because if I'm flying solo, I'll load up between 50 to 100 pounds in the front seat, just because this one tends to be a little bit aft on the CG, depending on how much fuel, because all the fuel sits behind me here, either under the mast or a little bit aft of the mast. Otherwise, as long as I have another person up front, you usually don't need to add any ballast or anything else.
What about the backseat experience?
I'd say this is like a 4-seater at times, unless, you have small humans back there that make it a lot easier. And I've had 5 people in here, and there's no big deal with it. It's roomy.
One thing that we have in the 44 is that there's no bulkhead between front seat and rear seat. So with my daughter, it's kind of nice to be able to hand stuff back to her. And actually, I could put a hand through here if I needed to. Hey, there's a dude back there. There we go. I'm shaking hands.
It is, but it's a little bit more difficult. It's kind of nice to be separated from the passengers, though, too. So if this was being used on a commercial basis and you're flying people around, now, I'll do angel flight as well and trying to really give back there. You get to know some of the people, but also I think it lends to pilot safety of if you're flying people that you don't know, that they can't really get to you on the controls too.
That's a good point. Let's talk a little bit about your specific use case. So you're a private pilot, you're flying for fun and also to give back, and that's awesome. So where have you taken this and how has it performed?
So, I do use it for business as well, in the sense that I need to get out of state. Instead of dealing with a flight to Arizona or Vegas or something like that, the power is wonderful. My cruising speed, usually I'm going to be between 100 and 115 knots cruising, just depending on the environment of what I'm flying in. Right now, we're just kind of cruising at 80 to 90. Just keeping it mellow today and just going for a leisurely flight. With the range extender on, presuming it's just myself and a co-pilot, we'll book about 3-hour to 3-hour and 15-minute flights, and that usually ends up being sufficient. This burns 25 gallons of fuel per hour. The Robinson, what were we at, 16.8 on that, so it burns a little more fuel, but you have a bigger fuel tank.
Can I ask a really dumb question? On the right side, there's a fuel thingy. What is that?
That is the range extender. So I guess when they built these, where the fueler tank cap is below the top of the tank. So you lose a variance of about 20 gallons. So what they do is that little L-shaped thing, it brings the top level of the fuel up higher. It allows you to get those extra 22 gallons.
Every helicopter has their Achilles heel, and it's like, oh yeah, you don't want to fly a Robinson because of mass bumping. Oh, you don't want to fly an MD-600 because of a tucking right roll. I've heard about the JetRanger tail rotor effectiveness. Is there any truth to that in your experience?
That would be the one thing that is the Achilles heel. Now, there are some fixes for it. Van Horn makes a tail rotor blade that seems to be standard fare. Well, I've gone through a ton of upgrades on this thing and having it over the last year. That's the one thing I have not added yet, and it's probably next on the list. There's another company that makes these strakes that go along the tail boom that add for additional tail rotor effectiveness. We're always looking for that, and have I had an experience? Yeah, I was up in Big Bear, we were doing some mountain training, came in, the winds were pretty good, and you noticed it. So it's usually when you're high, heavy, hot, those types of things that you're going to notice the difference with the van horns. Otherwise, everything's been great. I've been very, very happy with this. I have great mechanical crew that assist with this.
And that does get to the question of customization. So this bit was originally built in 1979, but as you walk up to it and as you sit in here, this does not feel like a dated helicopter at all. Real quick, just kind of go down the list of the things that have made this a bit more modern.
Got it. There's a company out of New Zealand that does aircraft interior kits, Generation Global, and I used them on the R44, was very happy with that. So we went all new carpet, seats, interior, everything, door panels, just making sure that this thing was as nice as it could be on the interior. At the time, we didn't touch the dash yet. It had all these standard steam gauges. Used Corona Air paint. They did an exceptional job. They took their time. They did it right. They etched the rivets. I mean, the job came out as good as it could have come.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this paint job matches your Lamborghini.
It does. I have a supercharged Huracan that is bright yellow, and the only difference is this isn't metallic. I was advised against going metallic on the paint on the helicopter. If you ever have any issue, I was told that it's horrendous to try to fix.
Noted. By the way, that is LamboMan37 on Instagram. Be sure to follow. How much horsepower does that thing make now?
We're at 1,065 at the crank on that, so we're looking at maybe doing a flex fuel system and bumping it up, but it's been a lot of fun. So.
I'm actually glad you were here for this helicopter fight. This is an intervention for you and your Lamborghini situation. We need to talk, man.
You got to have some fun in life. We try to work really hard. We try to treat people right and do exceptional work at the office, but it takes a lot of time. So this is my happy place up here.
Talk about the Garmin situation you got going.
Funny enough, when I bought it from Garmin, it just had two small GI 275 gauges in there, and the rest were the steam gauges. And it kind of blew my mind that, hey, I'm getting this from Garmin, and there's not the latest, greatest. But I think that they were just testing things out. So we ended up putting a G500 helicopter unit in here. I got a GTN 750 on the Navi. I still fly with my iPad just as a backup. I think it's always good to be redundant in the cockpit. We put the Diamond J gauges in as well. We've done light rings around everything. So if I'm doing night flights, it's not just disjointed lights, like one's brighter than the other or anything else. So it's all uniform. We put a vertical compass card. That's just a carryover from my Robinson days that I've just gotten so used to that of making radio calls and looking at where I'm at.
It is an older helicopter, but also it is a very common helicopter. If there are issues, they are very well understood.
Yep.
How has it been to own?
The one thing that I really love about the Bell 206 compared to the 44 is the 44, or any Robinson for that matter, has that 12-year anvil hanging over your head. With this, it's just time-limited components and or condition. Some things that are major that come up, your blades, you're going to look at $100,000 to replace your blades when those are up. Your turbine, depending on what wheels you're looking at, the stages within the engine as well as the turbine, you're looking at about anywhere from 120 to 170 replacement. So, you're planning for that throughout, same as the overhaul on the Robinson. It's just a planned out thing that you have to look at. So if you're good with planning, it's not a big deal, but it's not a cheap hobby to get into and own.
Now we have reached the self-indulgent part of the video. I'm going to thank the sponsor for today's video, Flying Eye Sunglasses. If you want to know why I wear them in the helicopter, they are super, super thin. They're made out of a patented material called Resilimide that makes them very, very bendable. Super thin temples here, so I can slide them on and off and on again. If you're curious why they are the chosen choice for me in the helicopter, or if you wear a helmet, headset, anything, even my wife wears them in her daily life, click the link in the description below to learn more about Flying Eyes. And now, on another self-indulgent note, when I was 10, my dad was a weatherman in St. Louis, and there's this festival at this park next to us called the Green Tree Festival, and helicopters were coming in land. And I remember going and talking to the helicopter pilot from my dad's TV station. And he's like, oh, you're Miles' son. You want to go for a ride? He had a JetRanger. And so I went for a ride with him, and my mom and brother came along, and I got to sit in the front seat. And he tried to move those pedals as close to my feet as possible, and I still couldn't reach them. But he let me hold the cyclic, and him kind of hauntingly telling my mom through the intercom, Mrs. Muzio, your son is flying the helicopter now. So that was my first and only time with my hands on the controls of the JetRanger with that big kind of emotional heart-tugging lead-in, would it be possible for me to touch the controls?
Absolutely. You have controls?
I have the controls.
All right, you have controls.
Anything I should know?
Fly it straight and level. Start there.
Well, now this feels immediately very, very comfortable. Yeah, the hydraulic controls feel right. Just do a little pedal action there.
So your trim ball is right there instead of the string. It's just that line is keeping that, so if it goes to the left, push left, goes to the right, push right. That kind of keeps you in trim.
I kind of like the Joanne's Crafts string from my...
the string up in the center bar?
Yeah, I'm kind of used to that. If I may, I'm just going to do some very gentle turns just to kind of see how they feel. Yeah,
you got a ton of time in helis. Have at it.
It's funny because it all feels kind of like velvety. It feels very smooth. Also, the controls are extremely light. Like that hydraulic thing that happens with Robinsons. I'm feeling very, very familiar to that. And then maybe I'll just push the collective down a little bit. There we go. It's funny because every helicopter has its own little nuances, but this feels pretty good.
It's a natural transition. It's a little heavier than the 44.
Yeah.
But it's a natural transition. It's not bad at all.
A 10-year-old Micah Muzio would be very, very happy at this moment I'm experiencing right now.
Enjoy it.
So I'm looking at the torque gauge there.
Yeah, so your torque, you have up to 85 to go. You're running at 71 knots. Cool. And then there's your altitude. So those are some of your majors. Your VSI is going to be right there.
This is nice. We do nice things.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in what we do. And so that's, I think, when we look at it is like with Angel Flight. One of my buddies does it quite a bit. We do what we love. If we could give back while doing that, it's such an awesome experience. It's really easy to write a check versus giving time, and if we have time to give, I think that's always a great thing to do.
That is awesome. Yeah, and what a good platform for doing that too. I think there is something very reassuring about like showing up in the helicopter that looks like the prototypical helicopter. People know a JetRanger. So you said this has always been the helicopter. It does raise a question then, is this the always forever helicopter, or is there another helicopter in the future?
If there would be one upgrade, it would be up to an L model.
Model.
No, not a 230. it would be up to, or is that a 222? It would be to an L model of the 206. I don't think I would ever need anything more unless I was able to jump into a 407. I mean, twist my arm.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to hand the controls back to you.
All right.
Your controls?
My controls.
Your controls. Is there anything you want to promote?
Yeah, just be good to people, have fun, and try to enjoy life, I think we're all so busy with everything going on that people forget to smile and have fun.
You could have been totally self-promotional, but you promoted the concept of goodness, and now I feel like a jerk by comparison. Hey, man, I really appreciate you taking me on a flight in the first helicopter I ever flew in, and the JetRanger is awesome. You did such a nice job with it. Is your left hand available for a 5? Bam! There we go.
There we go. Sorry, it was a little bit awkward.
Hey, it's always a little bit awkward with me, but it's even more awkward when you're flying a helicopter. If you don't already follow LamboMan37 on Instagram, be sure to do so, because he does some very, very cool stuff with helicopters and with cars. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. Bam!